welcome to the D1Baseball Instagram Live on the Gram. This is our weekend preview. We're doing it on Wednesday this week, and we're kind of toying around with continuing on Wednesdays. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. We're getting to the point where at some point in the future, people are going to start traveling again for weekend series. Travel can be on Thursday nights. So anyway, we're doing Wednesday night this week. So I am Michael Patrick Rooney. You may have already figured that out. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everyone. I'm joined by Kendall Rogers. I'm joined by Patrick Ebert. I am basically joined by greatness is what I'm joined by.
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Yes.
Ebert, why'd you take the Green Bay hat off, dude? Come on, man.
I'll put it back on.
Yeah, he's trying to make me feel better about my baldness, KR, is what it was.
There you go. Where's your Eagles bucket hat, Room?
Yeah, I save that for special occasions. That's formal wear. Yes. So, gentlemen, here's the life credo I want to share with you. Sometimes you need the Instagram Live. Sometimes the Instagram Live needs you. Today, I need the Instagram Live. The IG Live is going to feed me. Me and my awesome wife, Jenny, had one heck of a day. We woke up to flooded toilets last night.
Oh.
Yeah, then got in the car today for a long drive, and the crack in our windshield is advancing rapidly.
Oh.
Yeah, so we got some stuff.
We're sprucing your day up a little bit. By the way, speaking of sprucing the day up, how about Seth Lonsway hopping on the IG Live, this week's D1Baseball AstroTurf Player of the Week.
Look at you. Look at you. Thank you, Seth Lonsway, and thank you, KR. Well done.
Just trying to make you feel better, Roon.
Yes. Hey, KR, so I started, first of all, you guys did the first Nerdcast of the year, and that gives me great joy. You know, flooded toilets and cracked windshield be damned, because the Nerdcast is back, baby. So I only got a little of the way in, but it was really fascinating that even the top 8 to 16 was kind of difficult. That was interesting.
It was really difficult. You know, we wrestled with the decisions on, you know, where to put people like Tennessee. You know, when you look at the Big 12, you have a 3-team race. You could add 4 teams. You could go Oklahoma State as well. But you have a 4-team race. So it's like how, you know, looking ahead to the end of the season, like how do you dissect those teams? Like TCU has an advantage because they're 6-0 in the league. But there's also Texas, who's a top 5 team who may not quite have the resume of the other 2 clubs from an RPI standpoint, but is, you know, is still a very highly ranked team. So things like that, mainly like the Big 12, like what to do out west. I mean, Oregon, do you continue believing in it? Do you go with a little bit maybe a safer bet and a proven commodity like Oregon State, Arizona? So yeah, there are a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And just so you know, guys, I'll keep you posted. Kendall, Martha will be the first person to know, but Jenny and I are thinking about putting in a bid. We may want to host a regional in Prescott, Arizona. So just,
I thought you were about to announce a little Runes or something.
No, we're way. That ship sailed many moons ago. That's it.
Well, you know what?
We do have 2 dogs. So
do we have somewhere to host a regional in Prescott? Because I mean, it does have a good location.
Yeah, we have a lot going for us, except for the facility part is a little dicey. Yavapai has a nice yard, but I don't know if it's ready to host a Division I regional. So anyway,
no lights.
No, they do not have lights.
So it's like old school Pepperdine. You remember back when they hosted and they had they had to postpone the game because it was in the 6th inning.
2006, I think.
Yeah, Missouri was the 4th seed. I want to say there with like Aaron Crow.
Yeah, Max Scherzer. Yeah, and Max Scherzer. I think Max Scherzer was the upperclassman, and Aaron Crow was a true freshman. So, gotta love it. So this is week 8, gentlemen. So it's really getting interesting. So, Patrick, before we start picking series, you have any like kind of overarching observations? And obviously, you have incredible. You and Burt Granger do such a great job keeping us abreast of what's going on in the Midwest. But what do you got for us just overall, Peter?
Yeah, well, speaking of Burke, I mean, if you want to pitch well, I think you want to invite him to one of your games.
Send him a limo. Seriously.
I'm not really sure what he hasn't been to in the Midwest and even past the Midwest so far. So, you know, Kendall mentioned that Lonsway performance, and guess who was there? It was Burke. So,
right.
Yeah, Burke. Yeah, you know, the first thing that stands out to me, and looking at the projections, Notre Dame not only hosting, but as a top 8 national seed in rooms. I mean, you got to be pretty excited about that, just the thought of that. But, I mean, that's incredible. And that's such a tribute. You know, the last time you had me on, we talked about Link Jarrett and and they're still making it happen. And it's fun to see. I think that pitching staff is still a little makeshift, that I'm not still super confident, but I said this last time, I say it now. Are you going to bet against them?
Yeah, I keep doing that, right? And it's, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? You know what's interesting though? Like, it's easy to forget. Notre Dame has a sneaky good baseball tradition that just kind of got lost over the last decade or so. And
Yeah,
for
you know,
sure.
I think they hosted at least 2 regionals under Pulmonary, if not 3. So anyway, yeah, I mean, and South Bend in June would be gorgeous. You go to the Grotto, you go to the Linebacker Lounge. I mean, those 2 things are kind of in conflict, but hey, you know, like, you know.
I think that's what's really special about Notre Dame's team this year, and this is obviously no disrespect to Notre Dame, but I feel like it's like every weekend, like you're going, okay, Notre Dame's about to become Notre Dame a little bit, right? You know, like you're just kind of expecting them to take a little bit of a step back. But, you know, the thing that's impressive to me is, and Ebert mentioned it, is the fact that not only are they winning each of their series in conference play other than the split against Louisville, they're doing it with a match unit pitching staff. I mean, that to me, that just like illuminates what Link Jarrett and his staff are doing even more. You know, because imagine if they were completely healthy. So, you know, sometimes you're a coach. I mean, sometimes when you have injuries like that, other guys step up. Like, who would have thought after Arizona State lost Eric Tolman and Cooper Benson and guys like that Arizona State would still be winning baseball games on the weekend. So sometimes it gets guys who otherwise weren't going to be counted on as much to kind of elevate their game a little bit. And, you know, if you look at Notre Dame's remaining schedule, you know, North Carolina State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, all at home, they've actually got a pretty good advantageous schedule.
Yeah. I also, you know, I think, you know, it's really not how good of a coach you are often. It's how bought in to you is your team. You know, it doesn't matter how smart of a coach I am if the team's just not buying what I'm selling. And so Notre Dame clearly is really bought into what Link Jarrett is. I've told everyone that will listen, they play with a very high baseball IQ.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they are 2 steps ahead of their opposition at all times. It's really a fun style to watch. It's almost, you know, Cal State Fullerton-esque in some ways, but like a Midwest version of that. So, yeah.
And yeah, it's funny you mentioned Fullerton, because I think of the guys that have gone to Fullerton over the years. It also makes me think of Florida State, no surprise, because that's where Link Jarrett played.
Yeah.
But, like, those programs that are so good at getting the right kind of players on their team, and they're not always recruiting. You know, they still do very good on the recruiting trail, but they're not always recruiting, you know, the blue chip athletes. They get those guys in there that do the things that they want to do, you know, on offense and, you know, like grinding out at bats and, you know, working the count, getting on base, and, you know, eventually knowing that you're going to pile on some runs along the way, and just the pitching just being good enough, you know, just getting through innings and kind of do it similarly where you're grinding through games. So, yeah, it's cool to see. And it's good for the Midwest, good for all of baseball to see Notre Dame playing well.
Well,
No
I gotta give my man Nico Cavadas a shout out, because I feel like he's a KR special. You know, he's 6'1", he's 6'1", 240, 235. I remember seeing Nico a couple of summers ago. It was at the Northwoods League. I can't remember the scouting event or if it was the All-Star game in Kalamazoo, and like he was just hitting absolute tanks the whole weekend. And so to see what he's doing this year, hitting well over 300, hitting for big time power, he is kind of what, you know, I kind of call their enforcer. He is Notre Dame's enforcer.
That's a great word for it. And he really is allowing Link Jarrett to coach him, which I think is really, you know, Nico Cavadas has had a good career, and he's working with Link Jarrett, and you could see him just taking it to the next level. And I hadn't thought of that word, KR, but I'm definitely going to steal it, because you're right. Like, he is their enforcer. That is spot on. And, you know, KR, the other thing you guys said in the Nerdcast, and then we'll get on to our picks, is that really hit me like a ton of bricks is, okay, I think it was Mark Etheridge said it. You know, when you start thinking about high seeds and hosts, being a regular season league champion matters. Like, that's a massive resume data point. And we are really at the point in the season right now where, hey, if you want to win a regular season championship in college baseball, now is when you need to be downshifting. Like, you need to be getting into 4th and 5th gear, because it's go time if you want to win a title in the regular season. No,
there's no doubt about it. And certainly the ACC race at the top is fascinating. I mean, does does Louisville finally, relinquish its spot atop the ACC to somebody like Notre Dame? Like, who would have thought that coming into the season? So, whether it's the ACC or out in the Pac-12, the Pac-12 race for me is absolutely fascinating. You could really, I could see Arizona State winning the league. I could see UCLA still winning the league. There's 5 or 6 teams in that league I could see winning it.
No question. Patrick, before I forget, you may see the comments too, but we got a comment that said they actually thought you were Aaron Rodgers, which is maybe the
I kind of thought the same thing.
Yes. Hey, let me share with you something that Dan McDonald mentioned that is really cool. I thought this was a great comp. Dan McDonald gives great comps, and so he was talking about his team, and he's very self-aware of they're struggling in the bullpen, trying to get guys healthy. Jared Poland's really a critical guy for them, but when Louisville played in the 2012 Tucson Regional, and Arizona, who was on their way to a national championship, just wrecked that regional. Double-digit scores, just ran everybody off the field, including Louisville. And Dan McDonald's quote, Mac's quote was, he's like, so Arizona's not a top 8 seed? Like, what league are you guys playing in that you couldn't be a top 8 seed? And, it was just that things got going for Arizona at the end. They got hot at the end. They were playing in a very competitive Pac-12 that year. And, I think for Mac, that's what he's hoping that Louisville can be this year. They get healthy at the end. And I will say this, like, let's assume Louisville doesn't host. That's they could very easily host. But let's say they don't. With that position player group, they roll into your regional as a 2 seed. You're as a coach, you're going to be saying, I'm sorry, that's a 2 seed? Because, like, last night, Lucas Dunn's hitting 8th. And this dude's a big leaguer. Like, if Lucas Dunn doesn't play in the big leagues, I will really be surprised. He hit 8th in their lineup last night, and it's not because he's cold or because he's bad, or it's just because they are so deep. It's going to be a fascinating stretch run in college baseball.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's do it, boys. Let's jump into some series. So I asked each of you guys to pick 5 series, and for myself, I wrote down about 20 series. So we will expound upon your guys' 5 series, and I'm going to do some rapid fire as we go, which will be fun. But Ebert, why don't you kick us off? What's the first series you have your eye on?
Yeah, I'm going to go big right away. I'm going to go Ohio State at Michigan. If this was a football weekend, where they'd be talking about it for about 3 weeks. So
yes,
we'll talk about it for 3 days here instead. So. But, Ohio State, we mentioned about Lonzo's performance before. They had a 4-game sweep over Indiana, which is just huge. That was a huge series.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioned Burke being there before. He said Indiana, it's not that they're bad. They didn't play particularly well, and the defense looked a little sloppy. But this is the potential that Ohio State has. Now, they hadn't been playing that way prior to that weekend. And they're facing a Michigan team that's been – just kind of little, better than mediocre. The record, I think, is something like 13-6, so they're second in the Big Ten. But as we're going to mention in the power rankings that come out tomorrow, Michigan now 2 out of 3 weeks had a chance on Monday to take 3 games out of 4 over the weekend. Ended up losing on Monday to basically split the weekend, and they're a better team than that. But they have to start playing like it. And I guarantee you, if you guys would have been doing the rankings, 1 day later, Michigan probably be out of the top 25 right now. At least I'm guessing that they would be. So these are 2 teams. Ohio State, obviously needs to keep playing like they are to win. And Michigan needs to take their game to another level. And I'm just kind of curious to see, how it plays out with this series. And, they're obviously natural rivals. They don't like each other very much. But these are the type of the series, too, with the Big Ten being in the situation it is, that these teams, really need to play well and step up to get that national respect and perspective for them.
Yeah. 2 of the more talented rosters in the Big Ten, no question. So, KR, I think you have a big series to drop on us right away, too.
Well, I'm going to go with here in the Lone Star State. I got to start with Texas, the state of Texas, right? I'm going to go with TCU and Texas Tech. What a monster series this is. If you look from TCU's perspective, sitting at 6-0 in the Big 12, the Frogs have a chance to extend the lead even more. They could be up, they could possibly be up 5 games over Texas Tech in the league standings after the weekend. That's the reality. And so I think we look at TCU. I've been so impressed with what those guys have done offensively here lately, especially at Oklahoma over the weekend. When I saw TCU at Globe Life, my feeling was, okay, I really like Elijah Nunez. I really like Braden Taylor, and I like Luke Boyers, the three young guys. But I was kind of thinking, like, okay, where are they going to get more production from? And for the most part, they've done a really nice job top to bottom in that lineup lately, especially Braden Taylor. He's been awesome. And then, they're also getting good start. Austin Cribb's been good. Russell Smith's having a great year. And so TCU's a really balanced club. Texas Tech, I call them the Arkansas of the Big 12 because offensively, they've got it made in the shade. Pitching depth-wise, they've got an abundance of quality arms. The problem is the same thing with Arkansas at times. I don't think Arkansas is quite this iffy at times. But Texas Tech, outside of Patrick Monteverde, still has some issues with the weekend rotation. So, whether it's Micah Dallas or somebody else, Texas Tech, a lot like Arkansas, needs to figure that out before the postseason, especially if they have national championship aspirations. And we'll find out if they can kind of figure it out this weekend against the red-hot TCU club.
That's your guy, Patrick Monteverde. Hey, KR, he's from a Division II school, Seton Hill?
Yeah, Seton Hill. Yeah, he actually started at D3, went to Seton Hill. And, J. Bob Thomas, I wrote about this a while back, but, J. Bob Thomas got a call from a trusted, source in Ohio. I think it was Ohio, I want to say. And he's like, hey, man, you got to take this guy. And, at the time, J. Bob's thinking, okay, some, D2 guy who had, two starts last year. You're thinking, why would I take this guy? But he said when he watched his video, he's like, hey, his competitiveness is off the charts. The stuff's actually pretty good. Probably never takes Patrick Monteverde, which is pretty interesting.
Gotta love it. Can you guys still hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna power up here while we're going. All right. So I'm gonna go. Perfect. Let's power up. I'm gonna go one, and Kyle Lavender just put it in the Old Dominion at Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic we know is a really talented team. They definitely have wobbled a little bit lately. Conference USA, I think, is a really fascinating conference. And Old Dominion is playing great. Old Dominion's 21-5 overall. They're 7-1. You talk about a team that could host. They're kind of up in the Mid-Atlantic region where there's a lot of schools that could be bust to them. They're going to have to do damage in Conference USA. I'll tell you another, ODU for me is a sentimental pick this year because Chris Finwood just lost his wife recently to cancer. Also, I think got his 500th win. So, obviously a lot of emotion around what ODU is doing, but they're also really good. So, our hearts go out to Chris Finwood and what he's dealing with. And, at the same time, it's really cool that they have such a good team this year. But ODU will go to Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, it's never a team you're going to take lightly. They're very talented. I just, in general, guys, I'm really fascinated by Conference USA this year. I think it is I think it's a 3-bid league. Maybe it's a 4-bid league. I don't know. I haven't listened to the Nerdcast yet, but
I think it's a 4-bid league. I mean, you talk about Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss, ODU, and Charlotte. Robert Woodard and his staff are doing an amazing job. Down at Charlotte, and we look at ODU. Hunter Gregory's a big time arm for those guys. I mean, they've got some balance. They've got some veteran leadership. So it's interesting. We've talked so much over the years about the American. The Conference USA is kind of going old school. Not only are they going old school a little bit, who's the team in the cellar right now? It's Rice. So not only do they have 4 teams in the mix for the postseason, but one of those teams is not Rice. So that's a good sign for CUSA, not so much for the Owls.
Yeah, no question. So good. All right, so I got my ODU at FAU in there. Ebert, you go next. So what do you got going for number 2?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the Big Ten. I got Maryland at Nebraska. And this is another one of those, for Big Ten, they started a couple weeks behind. I saw Nebraska early in the year and really liked what I saw. And I think Maryland might be picking up a little steam here after taking 3 or 4 from their weekend, hosting both Michigan and Northwestern this past weekend. And going into the year, we thought Maryland could be not only good, but we thought they could be really good. We were a little concerned about the depth, but they definitely had star power. And that star power, led by their pitcher, Sean Burke, their ace, is starting to kind of take root and find his place, because he was pitching well, but he wasn't delivering wins, I guess, and then Maryland was finding different ways to lose. And it seems like they're ironing some of those things out. And on the flip side, Nebraska, like they just wear you down, and Coach Will Bolt spent a few years with Rob Childress down at Texas A&M and kind of learned that, that grinded out mentality. And that's what he does, because a team will be tied with Nebraska through like 5, 6, 7 innings, and then they just wear you down and they just start clobbering you, and they light up the scoreboard, and the pitching is just good enough. So I really like that series. I think it's another one similar to Ohio State and Michigan where both teams are in a position to really make a statement. Because to be honest, all 4 of those teams have postseason potential, but now it's a matter they got to go make it happen on the field.
Yeah, isn't it cool seeing Nebraska in first place in the Big Ten? Just checking those things out. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
KR, what are you thinking for number 2 here?
I'm going to go with Ole Miss and Arkansas down in Oxford. Boy, this is going to be a lot of fun. When you talk about capacity limits, there's no such thing at Swayze Field. They turn their head and just let people in.
Yeah, go get a drink.
Hey, I mean, you're in the outfield. You're having fun. I have no problem with that. So it's going to be wild down there this weekend. And, that's a really interesting series because obviously it looks like Ole Miss will be without Tim Elko, their power hitter, a guy that I think is actually in the mix for SEC Player of the Year. We'll see what happens with him long term. The prognosis doesn't sound great at the moment. But, like we mentioned with Notre Dame and some of these other teams, like without Elko, like who's the guy that kind of steps up and takes the reins from him a little bit. So that'll be a loss for Ole Miss this weekend. I think the biggest thing for me will be just seeing Arkansas on the road again. I mean, if you look at Arkansas at home, it's really weird. Like at home, they don't hit a ton. They have some issues on the mound at times. And then they get on the road, and it's like, they're the 1917 Yankees. Like they're the Arkansas team we saw at Globe Life. And so, will that Arkansas team that was at Mississippi State a couple weeks ago show back up in Oxford this weekend, or does the tide kind of turn and does Ole Miss, take care of business? That's a really, really tough series to predict. And I mean, honestly, like I'm not sure I can go against the Hogs, right? I mean, with the way they played on the road,
yeah,
it just feels like you're asking for trouble.
How about that schedule draw too? By the way, that Arkansas had to go to 2 Ole Miss and 2 Stark Vegas this year. That's a tough draw. That's a
tough draw. That just means that Bobby Moore feels like he has to step up a little bit.
Let's go, Bobbert. Yeah, that'll be
Roberto Moore.
Roberto. Hashtag call me Bob. That would be fun. That's a big time series. I mean, that's one of those series, KR, where it's like it's basically a super regional, but you can even argue that it's like 2 Omaha teams playing. Really?
Yeah, well, it's just like the Globe Life tournament. I mean, you can make a legit argument at the end of the year that could be a better field than the College World Series field. Like if you had a bunch of upsets, you could argue that. So yeah, this weekend's like a championship series.
Yeah. All right. I like it. All right. I'm going to give you guys a 3 spot right now.
Ooh. So
I'm going to give you 2 in the WAC. Cal Baptist is going to play Fullerton. I think that's some type of a makeup series. Cal Baptist is playing great this year. Under Gary Adcock. That's going to be a really good program. They're going to be a factor in the WAC forevermore. That's a good program. Fullerton, obviously, they're just scrapping for wins and trying to get going as Big West play goes. New Mexico State is 8-4 in the league. They're going to go play Sac State, who's 10-2. So that's very interesting. Let me just stay on the West Coast. I'm going to go Portland is 6-3. Portland has an older physical team, and I still think Gonzaga and San Diego are the class of the WCC, but Portland's a neat team, and Portland has got a chance to make some noise there. So there's 3 West Coast series for you. So, Ebert, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to go back down south after the SEC, and I'm going to talk about Mississippi State at Auburn. and the main reason I bring this up is we all know how good Mississippi State is. But I think one thing a little overlooked, Auburn came into the season ranked. They weren't far away from taking a series early against Boston College. And then, Ole Miss, that was a really close series. Arkansas, they played really tough. And they got swept, at Kentucky. But all 3 of those games were really close. So this is a team that's just been, on the verge every single time they take the field. And they're, I think, 1-8 in the SEC. And I don't know. I just, at some point, and it may not be this weekend against Mississippi State, but at some point, they're going to start making some of those close games into wins. And if you look at the numbers, they all check out. Tyler Miller's having a huge year. Their offense is loaded. Cody Greenhill's having a big year as a starter. And Their pitching staff has been solid, not great, but solid. But every weekend, I always make sure to check to see what Auburn did because in my mind, they're kind of falling under the radar because they've been too close, but on the losing side of things. And I think that just screams upset potential to me.
Kendall, what do you think about that? You've seen Auburn as their pitching gets healthy. I mean, it just feels like, to Patrick's point, Auburn's going to be a nightmare team to play in weeks 7, 8, 9, 10 because they'll be fighting for wins. It feels like they're going to be a very different team 4 weeks from now than they were 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think this weekend's really important for Auburn. I mean, I think we look back at that Arkansas series, they had a very good chance to win that series. They weren't able to pull it off. But for the most part, they played really well. So, I think they're catching a Mississippi State team that, though they, State can pitch at a pretty high level offensively, Mississippi State still leaves something to be desired. So I think they've got a legitimate shot to win that series this weekend, especially if Cody Greenhill once again can get them off to a really good start.
Yeah, I like it. Well, KR, give us number 3 for you.
I'll go with UCLA and Stanford. This is a big series for both of these teams. You look at Stanford, they have yet to lose a series this year. I'll be honest, when I saw Stanford early last year, I was thinking, boy, these guys are bad. And even Dave Esker was in Round Rock was literally laughing at how bad they were. Not in a, this is comical, but man, this is crazy, how bad we are right now. And so to see the strides Stanford's made, Tim Towles having a really nice year for him, hitting over 360. Zach Gretsch on the back end of the bullpen has been almost unhittable. Quinn Matthews, Brendan Beck doing a really nice job in the rotation. So, Stanford's been really good. The problem is that, they just don't have a marquee series win yet. I think this weekend would be it for them. UCLA, for me, I can't figure them out. I feel like UCLA is a lot better than they played, but, they now have series losses, this past weekend to Washington, who was winless in the Pac-12. They have a series loss to San Francisco, and they had that series loss to Cal Poly. I think Cal Poly is a solid club, but still, for UCLA, you need to win that series. So they've got 3 series losses. So, if you're UCLA with an RPI well into the 60s now, and you have aspirations to host, these are the kind of series you have to start winning.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you this. You know who else that's a big series for, KR? Arizona. Because I think Arizona's good enough to win the Pac-12, but they did lose the series to UCLA. So Arizona, if they're going to win the Pac-12, they need somebody to take UCLA out. Now, again, to your point, UCLA has kicked some series. But, that's good. That Pac-12, there's still a lot of clarity left to be determined.
For sure.
There. All right. Let me jump around. Abilene Christian's going to Southeastern Louisiana. Southeastern is winning the Southland, and I like that club. I like the Lions. UNCG is going to go to Mercer. Basically in the SoCon, everyone's chasing Sanford right now. Mercer's a team that's got a chance to catch them. There you go. Hey, Ebert, let's go back to you for number 4.
Yeah, what do I got? I have coming Kendall's way is K-State at Texas. And the main reason I have that listed is the reason we all know, and that's Jordan Wicks versus Ty Madden. And, I mean, that's the type of pitching matchup that you buy a flight for and you come and see. And my understanding is Kendall's going to be there, and he's going to be surrounded by a lot of people with radar guns. So what a fun matchup early. And I'm not sure there's been a one-on-one matchup like that, quite like to that level that we've seen. And Wicks obviously has that changeup, and Ty Madden's all about power. And I don't know, and the rest of that series, Kansas State is, they took down Texas Tech this past weekend, which obviously opened a lot of eyes. But their numbers are legit. They as a team, they have over 40 home runs. They also have a 3.5 ERA. Connor McCullough on Sundays has been just as effective as Jordan Wicks on Fridays, and Carson Seymour in between is, I think you saw him early in the year, and he just gets the job done. He walks a lot of guys. He gets himself into trouble, but he always gets himself out of it because he has the stuff to do so. But, can Kansas State now do this twice in a row, and do it, at Texas? I'm not so sure about that, but it's still going to be fun to watch.
Well, I think the most revealing thing about Kansas State to me is the fact that they lost, They lost 17-1 with Jordan Wicks on the mound against Texas Tech, and they still won that series. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Go ahead, KR. If you can hear me, go for your number 4.
Yeah, I'll go with, let's say Oregon State, Oregon. We just talked about Oregon in the wacky Pac-12. And now the series goes back to Eugene. Was it 3 or 4 weeks ago? Oregon goes up to Corvallis and wins a series against the Beavers. What was that? I'm trying to remember the last time they won that series now. That was so long ago. But, Oregon, the big key for them, we talked about it in the D1Baseball podcast earlier this week. The big key for Oregon, they've gotten a lot of guys to step up. Colin Kapka has always had a big-time arm, and we've kind of been waiting on him to flip that switch, so to speak. And, he's done that this year. Kenyon Jovan's been really good for them this year. And so Oregon, Mark Wazakowski has really pressed all the right buttons. And, boy, that would be really impressive if he can take both series from the Beavers this year. That would truly be kind of a sign that things are changing in Eugene.
That's right. Yeah, so let's see, what is my last? Oh, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame. And I saved that one for last. We kind of talked about it coming in. Notre Dame, it's just every weekend we're kind of waiting. I think we're past the point to wait to see if they're about to slip up, because I think more and more people are starting to think that this team is legit. Georgia Tech's got a little bit of that vibe too, because they started off obviously strong, haven't continued it quite to the consistency that Notre Dame has. So just from that standpoint, I think it's big. Georgia Tech's got a lot of young players, so I think going up to Notre Dame and playing them at home and having to face them and what's a really good polished team, I think they're going to have their hands full with that. So if I had to choose, I'd stick with Notre Dame, but I usually try to stay away from that. I don't want to jinx any of that luck of the Irish, but it's another great ACC matchup, and they happen. There's 6 of them every week.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Georgia Tech's one of those teams like UCLA to an extent where I'm not really sure what to expect from those guys week to week. My last series, I'll stay in the ACC as well. Florida State at Louisville. The last couple of weeks have been interesting for Florida State. They lose a series to Wake Forest at home. They take care of business against North Carolina, Parker Messick. And, we'll see what he does this weekend against the Seminoles. So that's a really fun series for me as well, especially as you look at Louisville and its quest to be at the top of the ACC at the end of the year once again.
Yeah, when I was watching Louisville and I watched them take batting practice and even the games, that is a different team. There are a few teams that can match up on a lineup like that, and how just disciplined they are and how hard they hit the ball consistently, and you have to pitch pretty much every batter differently and really hone in. There's no easy outs in that lineup. But I like Florida State's just the pitching. Their weekend staff has done a surprisingly good job this year, and you're right. That's going to be a fun series to watch this weekend.
Yeah, how about Florida State being a team we're talking about because of the pitching?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's nuts. Yep.
Runes, can you hear us? You know what? I think that might end it for us, guys. The Runes is having some internet difficulties. I don't know if there's a coach who doesn't like Runes hacking in his internet and not allowing him to speak. But it was great to have Patrick, a.k.a. Aaron Rodgers, on here tonight. And yours truly will be at Jordan Wicks versus Ty Madden on Friday. Patrick, are you going to be anywhere this weekend?
Yeah, we got rain coming through the Midwest. I'm going to try to see Rutgers at Northwestern Friday. And then a doubleheader between Indiana State and Illinois State on Saturday. So not sure if I'll see Jeremy Guerrero, who did a great story on last week, but I got my fingers crossed. So.
Yeah, Rutgers has been improved this year as well, with Steve Owens kind of leading the way. So that'll be it for us next week. So long, everybody.